Hey everyone, this is Jason Bradwell, one of the producers here at Future of Fandom. We've got a pretty special episode lined up for you this week. Live Like have been on the road. We attended Sports Pro AI, and now this week we are at Leaders Week at Twickenham Stadium, which if you are watching the YouTube version of this podcast, you can see behind me. In the first half of this episode, you're going to be hearing from Alex Hay, our new VP of Business Development and Strategy, and Samuel Westberg, our co-founder and Chief Revenue Officer, about all the insights and trends that they're hearing direct from the marketplace on the future of fan engagement. And then in the second half of this episode, we're going to be bringing to you a very special panel featuring Mihir Walavalka, our co-founder and CEO, where he sat down with the Saudi Pro League, Eurovision, and Warner Brothers Television on how AI is impacting the world of sports streaming. So we hope you enjoy this episode. Of course, if you do like what you hear, don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, and leave a review. And if you have any questions, please drop us a message on LinkedIn. So we hope you enjoy this episode of Future of Fandom. Here we go.
That's what we're in. We're in the engagement game, and the longer we can keep you there, the better. And the simpler that is, that's a good job for us. And it's a good partnership with Live Like. I'm not just saying that because he's here.
And that's sort of been our thesis as well. We want to drive workflow automation. I mean, Dave mentioned that the biggest hindrance to adoption is going to be that you have established workflows. So how do we bring the innovation, these AI capabilities in those existing workflows is what's going to drive most widespread adoption in our industry, at least.
Welcome to Future of Fandom, the podcast where leagues, teams, and federations learn how to turn passive viewers into loyal superfans through gamification, loyalty, and next-gen engagement. Let's build what's next together.
A lot of people are wondering where AI is going to have an impact on their day-to-day jobs. It's a funny political question more than a technical one for the time being. It feels like there are those layers of legal union kind of topics of like how AI is going to influence the jobs of multiple people inside of organizations that is big. So it feels like almost organizations haven't had a chance to look at what the impact of AI may be for their day-to-day and in terms of improving their operations and improving their output. So I think that that's going to be a super, super interesting topic for the upcoming months, knowing that I think that the companies that are best positioned to be able to do that are the ones who are integrating AI to their existing feature set rather than, fully new companies trying to come out with an AI product only.
I think the biggest theme generally, especially across the bigger organizations, NFLs, the Premier Leagues, is that globalization is the most important factor that they're considering as part of their strategies. So, international games, international fans, and really, bringing the game closer to them is a real focus for these organizations. And that just has so many flow-on effects to other areas of the business of sport. So it's been really interesting to hear that from those executives. I think the other themes is, just how important the fan is to sport and how centric that is to the decision-making that's happening at clubland, in the boardroom and obviously in everyday business as well, making sure that every decision they make has the fan at the center of the universe, whether that's from a fan experience perspective, whether that's on match day, digitally, internationally, whatever it is making sure that they are at the heart of every decision.
Fan engagement is used so broadly across the board, from video content consumption on social media to what we are doing right now. Fan engagement is so broad, but the way I tried to summarize it last time when we asked me is like asking how my son had fun at the venue. However, he's going to come back and answer that question is what I believe is a fan engagement, whether it's having a good experience buying something at the food and beverage, whether it is about the participation inside the venue. Everything that is about the fun experience of a fan in a venue falls in the fan engagement category, and also beyond the venue for the digital international fans.
I think people are starting to look at fan engagement differently. I think it's always historically been about, the fan experience at an actual game or whatever it might be, the actual product itself. But, fan engagement can take so many different forms. It can take so many different mediums now as well. So again, it's really about meeting the fan where they are and really engaging everyone, not just the people within your stadiums or at the actual, product itself. It's about how the fans consuming when they're not there, how are fans consuming when, it's during fixtures, for example, and really, deepening that engagement on a 365 basis.
I think we move to a world where people understand that there's not going to be the media rights free kind of money coming their way anymore. I think that is something that the organizations now understand. So they're going to have to work to create new revenue streams that won't be as big as the historical ones, but that they're going to start to have to focus on to keep growing their businesses. And I think that part of that is having a strong digital infrastructure to be able to give some of the value back to the fans by creating fun experiences that are plugged together. I feel like as a fan, you want to have the consideration that your club, you want to feel that your club considers you. And I think that giving some of that value back to the fans from the clubs is going to be essential for the clubs to be able to create that relationship with the fans, reinforce that sentiment of belonging, and create new revenue streams.
At LiveLike, we're talking about to our clients about loyalty, rewards, gamification, not just being a gimmick. It's about it being centric to the fan experience, about recognizing fandom in different ways and being able to provide value to that fan in whichever way it is that they actually engage. It's not, again, just about, buying a hot dog or buying a ticket. It's about, providing engaging functions for fans of all different types, wherever they are in the world.
There's always a tipping point when technologies is being adopted. I hope that next year it's about everybody using AI in their workflows to optimize their content output. And I hope that people don't only think about content as an editorial output, but as a bi-directional relationship between them and the fans. I feel like if the industry goes in that direction, that's going to open a wide range of opportunities.
I think in 12 months' time, I think we're going to continue to see, the changes in the way that engagement's happening. And I think we're going to start to see more and more integrated offerings with, different types of engagement content. I think it's going to move away from the traditional elements. And I think that there's probably going to be a lot more AI coming in, serving content to fans, at a convenient time, but also content-based marketing to them based on what they want. I think we're going to move away from this, approach of the same content week on week. I think it's going to be a lot more targeted, and I think it's going to be a lot more specific to each individual, just because AI allows us to do that.
I don't know if there's a ceiling. I definitely think that the opportunity is still very much out there. I don't have one example of an organization doing a great job at it, and I think that there are a lot of ways that you can engage your fans more extensively, whether they be on the senior side of things with big revenue or in the more junior side of things with the importance of catching the eyeballs and working on that loyalty from the early stages of life.
I think the ways that fans interact with sport is changing. I think historically it's been through, a league or a team, directly. Obviously now we see a lot more engagement through a player perspective. So, whether it's on social media and, interacting with them directly. Obviously there's platforms like Cameo now where you can, go and get shout outs and all that sort of stuff as well. So there is a lot more direct engagement with fans. I think fans do want that. And I think that the ways that, rights holders, broadcasters, brands as well are thinking, they really need to be thinking more about how do we make the fan at the center of the universe and how do we bring the sport, the talent, the game, whatever it is, closer to them.
I think that the biggest impact of AI right now is with Gen AI for the time being, which is the most straightforward usage of AI for anybody out there without adding layers of complexity. I think that the amount of content that can be created with Gen AI right now is a shame not to benefit from when you're an organization, and every single organization should find the right structure internally, legally, to be able to use what they believe to be the good Gen AI tools, because it makes you self-time, it makes you be able to address more people internationally. There are just too many great wins and takeaways that you can get from Gen AI that you can't pass on.
I think AI from a fan's experience comes from, being able to deliver tailored content to every fan. And I also think that the way that, we can provide more content, not only just from a written content or video content, it's also from, gaming content, from, the ability to utilize AI to continually give, content of all the scripts to fans, on a regular basis, on an ongoing basis. Again, so there's not this lag between these different types of content that we're sending to fans. So I think the role of AI really comes back to content, really comes back to, being able to provide the fan as much content as they can consume without obviously a human having to sit there and write video or create this content.
I realize that a lot of people don't use AI, but even the ones who use AI are scared of talking about it because they feel they don't know the technology well enough to be credible speaking about it. I don't think it's about understanding all the intricacies of AI as a standalone innovative feature technology. It is just about understanding how it can shape in simple words, in simple ways, your own workflows and your own work. And I think that AI shouldn't be used as a way of being cool or a specific topic for innovation groups. It should just be one that is standardized, not intellectualized, so that people are comfortable in the fact of trying out stuff in AI and using AI and saying that they use AI in small bits and pieces. You don't need to be a rocket scientist of AI to be able to talk about it.
I think in terms of the way that a lot of rights holders are re-looking at apps as an example. So they're not just looking at an app anymore as just where fans go to see fixtures or scores or, player information. It's really how are these different digital platforms integrated right across the club, integrated across all departments, everything they do. And again, having the fan at the center of that is the most important thing. And I think historically, some teams, leagues might have just deployed an app because they need to be in the space, but they haven't really spent the time to think about how their fans engage with that medium. What is it actually going to provide them from a value perspective, and how are they actually going to, monetize it themselves and, use it as a real, core part of their digital offering. I think historically that might not have been strategically thought about through the level that teams are talking about it now. So that's been a bit of a surprise, but also really encouraging to hear that, it's being thought of as more of a 365 than just a gimmicky sort of platform.
My takeaway of the leaders session is that I'm more and more convinced that there's great technology out there that needs to be plugged together in a smart way and consolidated, and that everybody should focus on core expertises to be able to be very good at what they do in their line. And for some people, mostly the system integrators and the people developing the platforms, to focus on good integrations and flexibility with different software versus trying to build everything internally to add layers of competition to every single topic out there.
I think my main takeaway from leaders from a fan engagement perspective is really how important the digital fan engagement is and how important it is to provide diverse offerings to, fans based on the diverse ways that they actually consume sports content, whether that's, from a broadcast perspective, whether that's, week-to-week content, video content, whatever it might be, and then providing the additional channels like, gamification, mini games, loyalty, tying it all together. It's really important to be able to drive fandom because, some teams, leagues are doing it really well. Others, have some room for improvement. And, it's an area which you're going to get left behind really quickly if you don't sort of step up to the plate. So that's been a really strong theme of the week.
Good afternoon, nice to see everybody. I would introduce my very famous panel, but their pictures of when they were young are behind them, so that will do the job for you. One of the things that I'm keen to do in this panel is to pin people down and talk about the specific area of broadcasting, because the danger is that we always go very wide and very theoretical. So I'd love to talk about case studies and things that you're doing, things that you think are impressive. And maybe if we just go one by one to start with about something that you're working on in this space that you're proud of. So I'll go along the line, and here, do you want to go first?
Sure. Thank you for having me. Lovely to see everyone over here. Here I'm the CEO and co-founder of LiveLike. LiveLike is a audience engagement platform. We work with media companies, leagues, teams around the world to help them engage their audiences, monetize fandom. The use of AI for us has always been about problem solving for our partners. So if you think about what LiveLike does, we're giving partners the tools to engage their own communities, engage their own fans, figure out how to monetize them in a different and better manner. And when we looked around our customer base and tried to identify what were the biggest challenges when they were using LiveLike, or our tools, it came to three core personas. The editorial team, who had to come up with all of the content or interactive engagement. It was the product team that had to understand the KPIs and understand whether there was an ROI from it. And then it was the engineering teams that were using like they were integrating. It's a developer first platform. And so we very systematically went about figuring out what are the uses of AI in solving those specific problems. So content automation from a workflow standpoint helped editorial team create content. You don't have to go to ChatGPT, type in a question, copy paste this into a CMS, et cetera, et cetera. It was all workflow. Product teams needed help with understanding what kind of campaigns to run. And the engineering teams, we basically built out agents where you can just go into LiveLike. We just launched our new product called Genie, where you can essentially just say, I want to launch a new trivia game using LiveLike on iOS, and it'll just spit out the code, copy paste it into your website, you're off to or on your app, and you're off to the races. So I think we take a very systematic, methodical approach to AI. I wouldn't call LiveLike a deep learning platform per se, right? We are more about workflow automation, product innovation.
So Louise, let's switch to you, and a great career, long history at DAZN and others. And now with Eurovision and the new platform, what's your key case study?
Across my career, I've been using AI probably for about 5 or 6 years now. And I think in the beginning, we were using it for content creation at DAZN, highlights predominantly. And it required a lot of kind of data feeds and various other ways to trigger the creation of the content. I think now it's moved on so much in the last few years where it's just smarter. It's learning, and you're not reliant on those kind of big data deals to drive your content or your metadata. And that means it's open to everyone, really. And that's really interesting. And I think it reduces the cost base, but also the accessibility for federations, content creators themselves, as well as broadcasters. What we're doing at the moment with Eurovision Sport is using AI translator commentary to reach new markets where we can utilize a strong English royal feed, just translate that into another language. So we just had the World Boxing Championships in Liverpool recently, and there was quite a few fighters there from India. So we were able to do Hindi AI translator commentary, which worked really, really well. We had a particularly funny incident in between bouts where they started playing Imagine by John Lennon, and the AI translation was translating the song, which was quite amusing. But what it meant was that the Indian audience, which we hadn't really engaged with on a massive level before, were able to watch their fighters fight at a very efficient way for us to deliver, both cost-wise, resource-wise, etc. So we're using that. We're also using a clipping tool from Sports Interactive, which allows us to create not just almost real-time highlights, but athlete focused. So Duplantis at the World Championships recently, it's getting ridiculous now how many times he's breaking the world record. But to be able to create like a montage of all the times he's broken the world record in the last few years is a kind of a content that people want to see. They want to watch him get better and remember back to when he did it before. So we're able to feed the content through the system and based on what happens at the sports event, generate content that is actually meaningful and really drives engagement.
That's great. Dave, what about you?
So, hello, I'm Dave Gibbs. I'm the SVP of Sports Product for Warner Brothers Discovery. What does that mean? It means that we build sports experiences across our streaming platforms globally. Been here 3 years. Previous to that, I did 20 plus years at Sky. So I think, when we think about the adoption of AI, automation, deep learning, machine learning, whatever we want to call it, from my perspective, we'll focus on a couple of things. Like, does it make the experience better for our customers and subscribers? Right, we are a premium sports service that people pay us a decent amount of money for every single month and expect the standard in how they want to consume and watch and listen and everything else. So number one is, like, how do we make if we invest in technology, how do we make the experience better for our customers? And then kind of secondary, the workflow perspective is just, can we do this more efficiently? Can we be quicker? Can we be smarter? I mean, we're in, tons of territories, multiple languages, multiple sports. Like, we're a big operation. So I think for me, when I look at the customer experience, a lot of what we're doing at the moment is really focused on the discovery of content. So we are a sports streaming service that exists within a much bigger entertainment streaming service. So sports is fighting for a share of voice against House of Dragon, Superman, etc. So as a customer, that can be quite confusing. So how do we use all of that data and all of those signals in viewing behavior to make sure that you are presented with the optimum experience at any point you turn on that streaming service? So my homepage on Macs will be very different than your homepage, than your homepage, than your homepage. And all of that is based on the signals that we are picking up from our customers around how they consume content and the way that they consume content. So if you're more attuned to watching live sports, we will present you with live sports. We can go deeper. If you're more of a tennis fan, we'll present you with tennis. If you watch a little bit of sport, but you watch a lot of movies, we'll lead with Superman, with a bit of sport. And you get the picture, right? So really, we are investing quite heavily in how we optimize that content discovery experience for our customers. I mean, I'll give you an example of what we're doing with video. So we've just launched a new version of Max, which uses a lot more video within the carousel and on the homepage to promote a series. So what the machine will do, the machine will identify 6 or 7 drop-in moments to that show, and then we'll present our marketing and merchandising team with those moments. They can then pick them before they were having to watch an hour, 2 hours worth of a show, 3-hour movie, and identify what those moments were. So that's one example of how we're kind of improving that efficiency.
Right. If I can just follow up from those answers a little bit, I'll start with you, Dave. You know, Louise talked about using the automatic translation tool. Clearly, something like WBD, you're in, you know, multiple languages in all sorts of markets. What would hold you back from using automatic translation?
I think it's that quality threshold, right? I think that's the kind of number one. And then two, like we have established workflows. We have established workflows that have been in place for years. And there is a cost to changing those workflows. The video workflow is very complex. You know, there's no one standard. So actually going into that and changing anything is not as simple as it's perceived. So then it comes back to the ROI. So the quality threshold and the ROI, really.
And Louise, for you, the question would be, you know, working for a group like Eurovision, you've got all sorts of different stakeholders there. How much of it as a challenge for you is to bring people up to speed? You have the vision of what's possible, but you're dealing with a whole load of very conservative stakeholders.
Yeah, I think to what Dave said, it absolutely is the case. I think that the concern around quality is there, and the EBU obviously represents the members of public service broadcasters across Europe. And there is quite a bit of reticence around that and nervousness around the quality of the AI tools. I think where Eurovision Sport has the advantage is we're at such an early kind of stage in our evolution. We're able to take those risks, and with the boxing as the example, you know, we only found out that we had rights in India quite close to the event. And their team was super strong, and we knew that there would be engagement. So we thought, right, how can we activate this quickly? So I think, you know, and then from the ROI perspective, we knew that we would get engagement, and it was a very efficient way for us to deliver it. Sourcing Indian commentators who specialise in boxing, all of the challenges that you face as a traditional broadcaster. But I do think that I see anyway myself in the industry, people are really interested more now in the case study. They want to see what's working, what isn't working so well, so that they could truly assess the risk against the investment. Because, you know, we've talked about the evolution of AI for, it feels like, quite a few years now. I want to see it working. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I want to see it, you know, in action. And when you watch it in action, you engage with that content, whether it's personalised feeds or, you know, gamification or all the AI tools you have available. If you're able to watch it and engage with it, and you see the level that it's getting to, it's never going to be perfect, right? We know that. We know that there's human intervention required on quite a few of the tools still. But if you accept that risk, and I think the younger generation are much more open to accepting the risk. I think as long as you're really transparent about what it is, sometimes it's actually attractive to younger people, where they find it quite interesting to go and see what AI is doing around their events. And so for me, I think there is plenty of opportunity. I think the risks are still there, absolutely, and for public service broadcasters, often the risk is too high. at this stage. But I think, we're lucky in that we can embrace this technology and really trial it and push it and see how far it can take us, because ultimately personalization, localization, they're critical to engagement now. And you've got to be able to serve the fans the content that they want, not that, you might think they want, that it's the stuff they're actually going to engage with. And I see that's where we've got to get to.
Right, I'll come to you later, Mahir, if that's right, because I want to just follow up on that, Louise. You talked about case studies are the best way of selling the story. So who's got a good case study? Who do you think outside your own work environment is using AI well? And you can't use Dave as the example.
It's an interesting question. As a middle-aged woman, I am obsessed with trying to engage younger generations now, because I think with a lean-back service that I grew up with, unfortunately, subscribers and engagement audiences in that market are going to be dead in 20 years. So we've got to figure out how do we engage the next generation, because if we don't have a business, right? And they don't necessarily have a lot of money, but they can drive engagement, and the way that they consume is so different now. So I love what Nickelodeon did around the NFL Super Bowl, because the NFL were challenged by a drop-off in engagement with the younger audiences. And what they did around the Super Bowl, like the first one was phenomenal, the big splash and everyone was obsessed, and then it was SpongeBob. And to me, it's really using kind of AR and AI, obviously, but to drive an entirely different feed. So it's appealing completely to a different audience. Formula One do it really well as well. And I think, federations and governing bodies are seeing that they do have to start targeting younger audiences. And I think that's where Mahir can come in again. But gamification is critical to that group. And how do they don't want to sit back and watch, they want to be involved. And, we're all now trying to think of ways of how do you get the audience more involved in the content through gamification, through them being able to personalize feeds, through, watch-alongs and creator-led content, because that lean-back service, as I said, it still has a place. There's no doubt in my mind that live sport, trumps almost everything else. But it's about how do you offer an additional feed, either they watch the main feed on their phone. I always think of it that they're watching the main feed on the TV. And my nephew flipped it completely in my head the other day, because he was like, no, I watched the match on my phone and I watched the creators on the big screen. I was like, yeah, you do. So that's what's happening. And I think we as broadcasters and as content creators have got to move into that realm if we're going to keep the engagement levels high and justify the subscription fees.
So Dave, two questions for you then. One is just following on that, talk about how you used gamification, because you clearly have used it very well within WBD, but also a third party that you're impressed with.
So we were talking about this, one of the questions backstage was like, who are you impressed with? And I said Wimbledon, and I've just looked up the next panel is serving up AI innovation with Wimbledon and IBM. So they are going to be able to tell the story far better than me. But I think from that perspective, I'm coming at this from as much as a product person as a sports fan. Like, I like context, right? There's all of this data that we can collect now, but it's what does it mean and why does that matter to me? And actually, I think the work that Wimbledon have done with IBM in taking some of that data and that advanced data they're picking in and then being able to tell the stories with it, I think is really interesting. Right? If someone is serving, their return percentage is X, well, what does that mean? Like, is that more than where they were? Is it less? What does that predict? And how does that tell stories? And I think from a fan's perspective, you want to understand more and you want to be told the story. So I think I think what they do is really impressive. I mean, I think coming on to the gamification piece, we're all in the engagement game, right? We all want to keep people hanging around for longer. We know if they stay for longer, they consume more. If they consume more, they spend more money with us and they're less likely to leave us, right? So we're actually working with Livelike and this product on, how do we, and this is more on our kind of web products at the moment rather than our streaming service, but how do we engage fans for longer? And what Livelike provides us with is a set of tools that allows us to do things like polls and predictions and quizzes and that kind of stuff, automated. Now, it clearly needs a human to check that it's the right thing and it's engaging and valuable for our fans. But that type of thing where, here's a story, here's a video, like, here's a related game about that. Here's a quiz or a poll or a prediction. Just very simple stuff that keeps you engaged. I mean, some of my ex-Sky colleagues are here and they do something very similar within their live blogs. That type of thing just keeps the user there for longer. It doesn't take a huge operational or editorial effort to do, and you can monetize it, right? And you know, and that's what we're in. We're in the engagement game, and longer we can keep you there, the better, and the simpler that is. That's a good job for us, and it's a good partnership with Live. I'm not just saying that because he's here.
Yeah, I mean, even when I was at Meta, we did a lot of A/B testing where we said, okay, we give a poll to X amount of people and no poll to Y amount of people. And you clearly saw those engagement metrics go up once they'd chosen a side or chosen a position, which obviously is food for you, Mihir. But rather than have you talk about how great LiveLike is, who else is doing it well? Who do you get impressed by?
I mean, I'll give two examples, one at a macro level and one at a micro level. As a consumer myself, I'm really impressed with what Google is doing just because it's infusing AI into every product that we use every day. So AI to summarize your emails, AI to compose your emails. Now they've just introduced the operator agent in the Chrome browser, so that'll drive adoption more because I feel like Apple and Google in the consumer space are just best positioned to drive widespread adoption because it doesn't change my habit. I don't need to download a new browser, an AI browser. Chrome is bringing AI in it, and that's going to let me experience for the first time what an operator agent is going to do on my browser versus me downloading a new browser and being an experiment on it. And that's sort of been our thesis as well. We want to drive workflow automation. I mean, Dave mentioned that what the biggest hindrance to adoption is going to be that you have established workflows. So how do we bring the innovation, these AI capabilities in those existing workflows is what's going to drive most widespread adoption in our industry, at the very least. And more at in our technology level, I'm a huge fan of CamAI. I think you guys are working with them. Their CTO Akshat is a genius, a young guy, came out of Apple, and just on it, just give a problem statement, solves it. The use case is obviously translation, but it applies in many, many different ways. I think in our industry, in broadcast, now there's federal governance. You have to have subtitling for people who can't hear. So subtitling as a federal requirement can be solved through AI. Historically, that might have required a lot of resources. That becomes suddenly the cost has dropped significantly. So I feel like those are the types of use cases. They are micro innovation. It's not massive change in stuff, but how do you drive more efficiencies, operational efficiencies, and that'll over time free up the editorial teams to think more creatively. And what else can we be doing in changing the broadcast? Luis mentioned about the slime meter with Nickelodeon or whatever, right? It's because they weren't focusing on it, or if hopefully others will be able to do the same thing because they're not focusing on the everyday stuff that can be solved by AI.
You showed us the Genie example earlier. So you're in a world now where you're having to pitch these services to broadcasters. What's the response genuinely like? You've clearly got believers here, but in the broadcast industry as a whole, are people looking to take on these solutions? Is it a difficult pitch or an easy pitch?
Honestly, once people see it, I think that from a pitch perspective, making it relatable to their day-to-day lives is what makes the most difference. Now, our board member asked me the same question when he saw our press release, is this actually going to drive impact? And my response was, I hope so, but it won't happen until people actually start using it, and behavioral change is difficult. Getting people to adopt something that is not part of their day-to-day routine is difficult. So I think everything that we have done from an integrated workflow standpoint is already being used. If you were spending 30 minutes coming up with a question bank for trivia, the right answer, the wrong answers, the two other wrong answers, and spending 30 minutes on it, and that's now being done in 3 seconds, of course you're going to use it. It's just, it's self-preservation, right? Just making your life easier. The Genie is more of a standalone product offering that allows you, it's more like an operator agent, which is going to require meaningful effort from a partner to start using it day over day, where we are spending time on it. And I think this is the part that's resonating most with people. If I came to you and I said, Peter, you're doing this job, I'm going to help you do your job better, that's a personal choice. You can decide whether it works for you or not. Where we are focusing on is actually coordination. It's more, enterprises are messy, right? Like you have siloed departments, editorial, product, marketing, BI, they all have to work together. And that part is where things fall down mostly. So Dave might want to launch something, but the editorial team may not be totally ready to adopt it. And hence the feature can get launched. Now, if these agents can actually do that job for you, so the editorial agent and the analytics agent and the marketing agent are all in unison at all points in time, that, to me, is the biggest impact. It's not single-use agents. It's those agents all talking to each other and this network of agents working together.
Dave, is that fair of the world that you have to work in? Is there a separation between digital and editorial that you need to get across?
So yes, to an extent. I mean, we're all kind of after the same thing, which is to increase our number of subscribers. I mean, that's our job. I think that the thing for me is, yeah, you're asking these editorial teams to do more things, right? So, if you think going back to the customer again, like things like, an indexable timeline, key moments, recap, whatever we want to call it, they're kind of table stakes now. I mean, that's not innovation, that's an expectation from the customer that's there. What do you mean I can't come into a game 20 minutes late and just find out what's happened? Like, maybe that's how I want to consume it, and maybe that's where I see the real value. So things like that are table stakes. And then we talk about altcasts and all of this kind of stuff. And, of course, YouTube are going to win in that space in terms of scale, right? Stick the NFL with Mr. Beast or Speed or whatever, of course. So, but what can we do when we have a user base that finishes 75, 80, 85 and starts at 9 or 10, right? So how do you create an experience that works for all of those audiences? And to try and do that manually and create 4 or 5 different versions of the same stream is just hard. It's just hard. You're asking the same team to do 5 different things. So, what we've done is try to invest in those tools that drive the biggest impact. Things like our key moments, we can roll those out across multiple sports in multiple languages in different countries. Things like rapid recaps, it needs to be more than just stitching those key moments together, because that's not a particularly good edit if you're paying us £30 a month. So I think as long as we are working on tools that make that editorial team's job either easier or they don't have to do the same thing for different things 5 times, I think that works for us, yeah.
You have a unique position in that you're also working across the US and what TNT are doing there. Do you see a different attitude in the US? Are we behind in Europe? Are we ahead in Europe?
I honestly don't think we're behind. From everything that I've seen, other people might have a different view. I think we're all in roughly the same place. Obviously, some sports are different, right? A highlights service from the NBA is very different than a highlights service from the Premier League. A 0-0 draw versus a 90-86 points event. There's a lot of different type of content that's produced. And so I think for the automation of those highlights, they have been more advanced just because of the sheer volume. But everything that I see, I think we're in a decent place. I mean, if you look at what ESPN have just launched, it's a good app. It's a good app with good stuff in it. But I don't think there's anything that we haven't seen in these markets.
Louise, you've been through this change with DAZN, with now Eurovision. Where do you think the biggest gains in efficiency have been that you've seen over that period?
I think AI driving personalisation of the app is critical to what David said. I think, you could now go onto an app and be served what you want to watch, what you traditionally engage with. And AI plays a massive role in that. Just the efficiencies of not having teams running apps in languages, apps in, I only follow Premier League or I only follow rugby or whatever your thing is. The metadata that you can gather and the algorithms that you can gather from your consumers allow you to drive a personalised feed. And to me, that's one of the biggest innovations that I think we have got to use, because people are impatient. They don't want to log on to an app and scroll through tons of stuff to try and find something to watch. When it happens to me, I can tell you now I close the app because I don't have the attention span to find something. Whereas if I go on Netflix and they say, you've watched this, you're going to enjoy this, I will watch the trailer. I might not watch the series there and then, but I will watch the trailer. And so by serving up content that you know people will engage with, you're just almost guaranteed that engagement level. And I think that what AI can do to serve up that personalized app experience is groundbreaking, because the efficiencies that you can make across that, and also make it really personalized. I am a certain team, I don't want to watch, one team against another. I want to watch this team. I want content about this athlete. So being able to create content and serve content around what my algorithm and what I'm interested in is critical. And I think AI allows people to do that at scale, in multiple languages across multiple territories, and that's where I think for global companies it's a game changer.
Just to build on that, I did some research before I came in here, and I was like, well, this is what we're doing. What's everybody else doing? Are we behind the curve? Is there FOMO? Are we ahead of the curve? And I saw a piece of research that a guy called Dan Rayburn, if any of you are familiar with him, had done. I think you guys have. Yeah, you've had him on the podcast. And he did a piece, I think he interviewed close to 200 execs, OTT execs, streaming, sports leagues, etc. And the question was like, are you using AI in your video workflow? I think 68% of them said no. I think 18 said yes, and the rest said, yeah, we plan to. Read into that what you like, but I think the single biggest use case was content discovery. Yeah, and I go back to what we said at the start, like, when we are trying to make sports live within a much broader entertainment experience and give that customer all of that choice, the more that we can use those signals to optimize that experience is a real opportunity for us.
Mihir, what about, we all talk here as like we're complete converts. What are the misconceptions about AI that you come up against?
We all are have been swept up by the hype and wave of AI. I think from my standpoint, a lot of people think that AI is going to essentially, we're going to get into this autonomous world where everything is being served up to you by AI, so to speak. And to me, I have two kids, 6 and 3. I'm scared of what the world looks like in 20 years from now. But if that's what the reality is, but like I personally believe AI should be more of a helper rather than someone who's going to replace. This conception that, AI is going to replace all jobs. We see it on our own day-to-day, right? Like, from I'm running a startup. How many people are we hiring? I don't think it's taking away jobs. I think it's making your existing team members do more, do better. Now, does that mean that I may not need to hire as many people if the same person has superpowers? Like, that's probably true. But from a perspective of like, especially in our industry, AI can do things on its own is just not going to happen. You talked about the Hindi use case in boxing. Even the biggest tech companies' translations or automation from using AI is going to miss the nuance, is going to miss the context, which for a discerning audience, which the younger audiences especially are, but even the older audiences are, it just doesn't work. You have to adapt it. You have to train those models on specific things that are key to that sport in that country, in that language. It's not just translate how this sport is consumed or translate how this language, go from English to Hindi. It's listening to boxing in Hindi. I would love to listen to the Imagine translation in Hindi, and maybe Peter, you can tell us with your Hindi knowledge how well it did. But I think that's the one misconception in my mind, is that it's going to be autonomous and we're going to just replace everything. I don't think that's the case. On the other hand, though, people go on the other extreme. Oh, it's hallucinating. Oh, it's not accurate. Well, it's not supposed to be perfect. It's supposed to make your life easier. Don't throw away the good, the okay with everything else. From my perspective, that's where the adoption needs to be.
On the it's not perfect thing, the best quote I always use about AI is, "This is the worst that AI will ever be." Right, and it will learn. Because we've got a very tech-savvy audience, you clearly don't need the instruction that there's a QR code there to submit questions, because we've already got our first few questions in. Just running through some of them, I'm going to pin on you, Louise, because you mentioned Nickelodeon and the NFL. One of the questions is, you mentioned SpongeBob and how it engages a new audience. How can you shed more light on how this engages new audience?
I don't have the viewing data, so I don't know. But I do think that offering kids a more kids-focused feed will keep them in front of the TV longer. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is a whole other question. I was hoping you were going to ask me the next one, which is about the duration of the content. And
You're allowed to answer that as well. So the question, just so in case someone can't read it, is right behind your head.
I think the interesting thing is we all thought, even just 2 years ago, that it was about snackable content, and I hate that word. It's not. Because they're watching full live streams with creators watching a football match. So I think it's a myth that their attention span is short. I think all our attention spans are shorter because we're all addicted to our phones. But I think if you're putting something that's interesting on the phone, people are staying on the phone. So I don't think that it is about duration. I think it's about engaging content where they feel part of the event and not just sitting back and watching someone serve them something. So I do know that for F1, they are getting more engagement across that piece that they're doing. I don't, again, have the numbers, but I think you are creating a bespoke feed that doesn't have an adult theme to it. It's based on what the kids want to watch, and if you can bring their world into a sporting world, then you're uniting their interests, and therefore that kind of cross-pollination of interest happens. And to me, I think it's a great way to get kids into sport now.
I mean, I can just quickly add to that. I think that was step one, right? NFL putting the stuff on Paramount, then Disney did the same thing by using their own IP in it, and it brought a lot of brand sponsorship integration in there. I know Sony is working a lot through Beyond Sports on this stuff, but it was step one. Step 2, 3, 4, now you're bringing the creators in there. Now you're giving an NFL game internationally to speed to comment on. So I don't think like that one thing changed behaviors. It brought a different type of audience into the world of NFL, and now you're keeping that audience by giving the content to the creators that they watch the most on YouTube, and doing these co-viewing things with Speed and Mr. Beast and stuff. So I think for me, I think it's a series of experiments rather than one thing that drove a meaningful change.
Dave, is that fair of what you're doing at WBD? You're looking at a series of experiments, and do you recognise that question as something that you're asked in terms of your normal job? Won't the younger gen grow up out of short and sharp content?
I mean, ask that question. I mean, no one in here is 10 years old, right? And I bet we're all consuming short form video in some case. But I think the Olympics is a really good example of like how we covered all of that choice, all of those audiences and all of those different consumptions. I mean, I could spend a whole session on the Olympics. So just quickly, we had 7 billion minutes streamed to 7 million users just on our platforms. But across the piece, we had 5 influencers in Paris with access to the venue, courtside, trackside, poolside, creating content for their platform and our platform. We had highlights and reels and replays of every different event, and our customer promise is that we will offer you all of the Olympics and you will never miss a moment. And for me, that moment could be watching the 100 meters live, but for you it could be watching a short reel on your phone or watching something. I mean, we had kind of Robbie from Arsenal Fan TV there, trackside. It kind of like it's trying to meet all of those audiences in the right areas where they are, but finding balance with ultimate aim is to bring them back to us to watch the whole thing. So I don't think people won't grow out of that. Like it's just where it is and how you have to adapt your content.
Yeah, I was going to say just on that, the short content definitely works, as in real-time clipping of live events, but everything is driving back to the live ultimately because that's where your main engagement comes from. I do think that when it comes to highlights, it's shorter the better because people don't want to commit the time. No one goes back and watches a full football match. We know that. You can enhance it as much as you want, but ultimately, unless it's curated or narrated in a different way, people just won't commit that amount of time anymore. So there is definitely a place for the short content, and that isn't going to go away. But equally, there's a place for the longer form content as well.
The next question was something that you mentioned in passing, Mahir, which is about editorial roles. Because clearly you can see how a lot of the digital workflow is improved by AI. How do you envisage the future of editorial roles in the world of AI?
Augmented is probably the easiest way to put it. I mean, one of the things that we've started talking to a lot of the broadcast partners are can we? I've used this example a lot with when I'm talking during my pitches. But let's just assume there's a Man U Liverpool game going on. Liverpool gets a red card. Jamie Carragher loses his mind. He's with Neville. Like, here we go again. This happens every time. 10 years ago, we were in the same position. The referee gave a red card to Liverpool. The game changed. Now, in this context, normally you would have had like a sports guru or an analyst sitting in the truck, scouring through all the archival footage to find that right moment. I think AI can do that today. That transcript can be a prompt into the LLM. It can look into your DAM and MAM systems. It can pull out the highlight because it's all tagged with metadata at this point in time. They can find the clip and make it available to the producer. From that point on, it's up to the editorial team to decide what to do with that content. Do you want to send it as a push notification on your phones? This is what Neville Carragher, or put it up on Instagram, or do you want to show it on your broadcast feed? Give it to the commentators as something that they can laugh about during the halftime programming? I think from my perspective, I think it just allows the editorial team to be more creative rather than spending time on just the searching of the content. And I think that, to me, I actually think there's a lot of cool stuff that can come out from a broadcasting and from a consumption standpoint for using that editorial workflow.
Mihir, thanks a lot. We've got lots of questions that we haven't got the time to ask, so can I just encourage you to badger the members of panel off the stage when they get off there? But it's been great to have you all, and much appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Future of Fandom. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and follow LiveLike on LinkedIn for more conversations with the people shaping what's next in the world of sports and media. Until next time, keep building for fans, not just users.